We're live with Jeff Eyet. Jeff is an AI strategy consultant. We're going to get his hot take today. But yeah, he's into strategic planning and AI advisory. He's the co-founder of BIG, Notorious. He's a podcast host. He's a keynote speaker. And yeah, just interesting guy. I saw a solar city in his profile. It's pretty rare. So Jeff, how's it going? Tell us a bit more about yourself and what you're up to nowadays.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity to connect, Charles. I really appreciate it. My name is Jeff Eyet, and my hot take today is that AI needs humans more than humans need AI. Seems like an odd perspective, but in reality, when you break it down, AI is useless without data, and it needs data generated by humans. And AI doesn't have the ability to implement its outcomes. It still needs people to do that. And so if you have humans on both sides, then we need to look at AI not as something that will replace us, nor is it something we should put back in the bottle, but it's a tool that we need to embrace. And that's just a learning that I've had throughout my life. I started coding websites back in my dorm room during the internet bubble, and there's a lot in common. So I'm trying to take those lessons and helping my clients apply them to AI. And that's why I'm here today.
An interesting perspective, and yet AI wouldn't be without us, right? It needed our brain, it needed electricity, it needed GPUs, needed data centers, it needed softwares and algorithm for sure. So yeah, I don't think it's something that is necessarily going to be evil and slash us off, but like the origins of AI and the reason why it was created by definition was sort of to replace us, right? So I don't think it necessarily needs us. I mean, technically it does, right? Like, but at some point, I do think it's going to fly by its own wing in the agentic revolution. What do you think about that?
I worry about AI that can fly without us. I was teaching last night at the engineering school at Berkeley. I teach an AI class, and one of the students brought up that question is, should AI have an off switch that humans can control? And if, let's say, XYZ AI companies trading an algorithm here in the US and the government thinks it's out of control, should the government have the right to go in and close down that data center? Right? That's a fundamental question, and I don't think that's science fiction. I think that's reality. If I'm a police officer and I am pursuing a self-driving car for a traffic violation and the self-driving car takes off, the police should have the ability to turn off that self-driving car, right? It shouldn't just be allowed to race the police, down the freeway in an unsafe way. So that's one of the reasons why I say that we have to keep humans in the loop. At the end of the day, that's the main thrust, is humans have to remain in the loop. And I'm happy to talk more about that, but that's I think something that executives are working on. Just as an example, I interviewed one of my classmates. He works for a natural gas company. They drill natural gas wells. And I asked him, well, how are you using AI in your processes? And he says, well, we don't develop the AI. The company that makes the drill bits that drill the wells employs the AI. And we just use their solution. Obviously, that's helpful because he doesn't have to incur the cost of a development team, but he's giving up control to that vendor and trusting that they will limit its use to that one application. And I think that's the trade-off that a lot of executives haven't really considered. And so forget the technology, right? We can work with the technology, but until the humans are in a place where we have the systems to be able to turn off AI, to ultimately have control and to understand what we're giving it control of, I think we need to have those conversations, and that's what I'm really pushing right now. And hopefully your audience is at least thinking about those questions. That's probably why they're here.
Yeah, it's a very interesting question. Should dogs have off switch? Should humans have off switch? Is another question. Should Neuralinks have off switch? I guess it depends like who you ask. If you ask a libertarian like me, I think sort of breaking the rules without negatively impacting others is my way to thrive. It's my way of having fun as well. But yeah, like if you are like, yeah, telling that to a terrorist with a nuclear bomb, certainly we should not allow that. But my train of thoughts here would be that this terrorist wouldn't get there. Hopefully, with AGI, we would get more resources, more abundance, and more guidance as humans, which I think we need, like more education, right? I think most of the conflicts nowadays happen just because we don't have the sufficient education and we're just wired emotionally in some way. Take the Israel and Palestine conflict that's been going forever. It's just a story of vengeance and emotions. If you bring into like sensible reasoning, right? It's testosterone, it's cortisol, it's adrenaline, and it's war, it's PTSD. So yeah, it's a very tough question that we need to address ASAP, because I feel the AI, the tech is progressing at the 1000x, but EQ and ethics wise, we're still like at the snail's pace. What do you think?
Totally. Well, you bring up a great point. So as a libertarian, yes, I would cringe at the thought of the government having control of the off switch. But yet, as a libertarian, I don't want a terrorist to learn how to make a chemical weapon with an AI algorithm. And what's the balance there? Now, I think this gets into one of the fundamental frameworks of AI. And this is when I teach my students, or I do corporate trainings, or help companies set their AI strategy, I always work to boil it down to very basic frameworks. And one of the frameworks that I always look towards is this idea of the acceleration or deceleration. You have people who believe that the only way to a better future is more technology. And that's the EXL movement. Mark Andreessen's written about that, right? That's the venture capitalist Silicon Valley approach. And then you have the decel or deceleration approach. And that was the folks on OpenAI's board who felt like, Sam Altman's getting a little bit ahead of himself here by trying to commercialize these algorithms before we've fully de-risked them, right? Two totally different camps. And so if I'm that libertarian, I might argue, well, we need to allow free enterprise to, knowing that the government has an incentive to stop terrorists from getting learning how to make chemical weapons from our algorithms, then we should give free enterprise the leeway to build out algorithms that stop the the terrorists from jailbreaking the algorithms. You see what I mean? And so I think that's what it fundamentally comes down to, is the best solution keeping a human in the loop, or do we get to a point where we actually inspire humans to build better systems and ultimately let the systems check and balance each other? I mean, as a libertarian, I'd kind of be keen to understand, do you trust the systems to police itself, or do you still think in these extreme cases there should be an off switch?
I think the government, generally speaking, the Western civs is trustable. So is the police force. I think that most are good, but there's always a couple of bad apples, and these need to be vetted. And I think, we've seen some of that in greater propensity in the CIA. For example, I think they've greatly overstepped their powers, right? So there's these pockets with more wrong into them, but I trust corporations more than government. Oddly enough, I'm a tech maximalist. Depends on what corporations, right? If you an individual specific, like I'm very bullish on the individual that leads the company. For example, Elon, I don't trust this fucking guy for shit, he was my favorite entrepreneur, just like a bunch of founders, but he just went to the dark side. Maybe nowadays he's came back to his senses now that he's no longer supporting the current administration. But yeah, I just think he just burnt his brain in the last couple of decades. And yeah, I do trust Sam Altman way more, the character that he is. A lot of people don't like him. I don't trust that much Mark Andreessen himself, right? Like I'm more humanistic and analyzing their psychology, their psychometrics, and that usually is the main driver behind a company, right? So some corporations I do trust. Facebook I don't trust. We've seen what they've done with our data, and also that's because I'm an entrepreneur, but I also think that corporations are the future governments. I do think that corporations are going to overtake governments. The book Sovereign State is a is a good anchor for that thesis. It's just like the accumulation of resources. Governments are incredibly inefficient. They should be run as a company, in my opinion. That was bold from Elon, by the way. It was a bold attempt, but as you can see, you're just entering a shit show when you're trying to change things at the government level. It's a bureaucracy. It's how things were made. It's serving people. Guess what? It's like what people want. People are constantly complaining, but people are incredibly tough to please, And when you're talking about the company, they have a specific ICP. They don't deal with farmers. They deal with, I don't know, CEOs of fintech companies, right? They have a specific set of people and group that they serve. So, and I think that if corporations would want to serve these people, eventually they would have a very much easier time to serve these. So I am a tech maximalist. That I do think that most of us would be Neuralinked in the future. I do think that democracy would be way better because we would take decisions immediately, right? Just like through neural connections, and it would be blockchain encrypted, and it would be impartial. So, or country or little island or piece of land could move at an exponential rate, just like a company and an AI would. The government, I think they're very slow, and I don't see how they could keep up with AI. And if you think about it, governments, it's just like a convention, right? Just like money, it's about trust. It's very fragile. It's not because of their performance, right? It's just like, oh, there's nothing better. An interesting question that I have for you, like, what do you think would be the next evolution of the government? Like, if Elon tried this full thing with the Doge thing, and it failed dramatically, and Elon's pretty good at making change quick. Like, what would be the next evolution of the government involving AI, and what could be the possible evolution of democracy and a better system ultimately?
Yeah, wow, that's a 50-cent question, but I'll be happy to give you my thoughts. At the end of the day, I think Elon has done incredible things for America. I own a Tesla, and someone said to me, "Oh, you're one of those Tesla guys." And I said, "No, I support a company that employs 125,000 Americans."
Yeah, Tesla's great.
That is plain and simple. So Elon is very much a first principles guy. That's how he founded SpaceX. It was an interview he gave in Wired magazine back in 2012, where he talked about his team broke down the cost of a rocket, understand that the physical inputs into that rocket, the raw materials, accounted for 2% of the cost of that rocket. So he said 98% of that is I can optimize. Fast forward to, I remember an interview he was giving in the Oval Office, and he was talking about, he used the phrase rate limiting factor. And he said, there's a mountain in Pennsylvania where they put all the records of government employees. And he said, when we view that system, the rate limiting factor for how many employees could retire at any one time was the elevator in this mountain that moved up and down, that moved these physical records up and down. So, like, to him, that's absurd. And I agree, that's absurd. If I'm a taxpayer, it's absurd that 98% of the cost of a rocket is probably overhead and fat that should be eliminated. And so, again, I'm looking to putting that libertarian hat back on, as you said earlier. If you're going to take my tax dollar and you're not accountable for how it's spent, and somebody comes in and asks you to be accountable for how that money's spent, I think that's a good thing. Now, where he went wrong, and I think the current administration is facing its backlash, is that they're making whether they're politically charged decisions or not, they've created an environment where no one can agree. You're either right or wrong. There's no middle ground, and middle ground is weakness. That's the problem. Okay, the political system, the political climate is the problem. And that, placed on top of this first principles thinking, has made Elon look like an idiot to some people. But if you take the politics off and you go back to his first principles thinking, he's acting completely in line with what he's always believed. Go back and read his biographies, and you'll see this throughout. I'll end with this. There's a classic story in his biography where he had an administrative assistant, and she asked for a raise. So he said, I want you to take 2 weeks off, And if I can do your job plus my job, you're fired. And in 2 weeks, she came back and he fired her because he could do her work. Now, does that mean he's a jerk? Yeah. I mean, some people are absolutely going to think that. But on the other hand, when you look at it through his lens, that's completely on brand. And, maybe in another podcast or here, we can talk about those human motivations. But that's what I encourage people to look at is in this race, you talk about the leaders we're betting on. What's motivating those leaders? And do I trust that motivation to drive that leader to a human-centered end?
Right. Yeah. The firing thing, like that's me as well. Like I'm not emotional, I'm very first principle based. That's why I said Elon was one of my favorite entrepreneur. Probably like 25% of my brain is because of the guy that he is and what he created. But yeah, major missteps like being naive enough and risk taking. I respect the risk taking, but like thinking that you can one enter the bureaucratic political realm and have a change. Yeah, that's one. And then built on the Trump administration, that's like your odds of success are very, very small. He did that probably to get the contracts right and advantage his company, and sort of is lying to himself and to people, and that other founders and smart people can see that, right? So you really need to be full stack to be a hero in this world. It's not just about being good at business, it's about having solid values, like not lying, not modifying your game plan for personal gains while you're claiming otherwise, right? Like his Twitter acquisition, the name of democracy, like fuck that. He acquired that to elect Trump, and it worked. So there's these kind of missteps. Tesla, I mean, it revolutionized the EV industry. They did humongous great, but yeah, I mean, you cannot win all the time, right? Like I respect the risk, right, that he's taking, but in the last years, it's just been fucking terrible. It's like, yeah, he almost killed all his previous work and panache with like what he did as of late. A lot of people also think that way, and I think he can do better. But how could you ask that to someone that has worked like 80, 100 hours a week for 20, 30 years now, like that? And that's also a miscalculation from his end. You're gonna just burn out, you have a brain. So anyway, let's just hope that Elon can get back on track, because we're all vouching for him, right? Like my heart is still there. But to my question, what do you think the next version of the government would be? Do you think that's a possible thing? Do you think my vision / prediction of corporate governments, corporate entity, corporate states would actually be a thing in the future?
Yeah, great point. And I've read a lot about this, and what I tend to think of as you look to the past for directions about the future. And there was a famous quote by an American politician in the 1880s. So at this point, 140 years ago. And he said, the role of politicians is to take money from the rich with the promise to protect them from the poor. And the role is to take votes from the poor with the promise of protecting them from the rich. And so that's this political class that has existed between those that have and those that have not. That's as old as human history. And so I don't think we're going to change that structure. Now, this is where Sam Altman comes in and his company Tools for Humanity. He's launched WorldCoin as a UBI initiative, Universal Basic Income Initiative. And really what that company's doing, in my words, is becoming the plumbing of government. So you may have an elected head of state, but that head of state, their power is going to erode as AI takes jobs, increases unemployment, redirects taxes to those that are the most efficient. And states are going to struggle to meet the basic needs of their populations, whether it's through healthcare, unemployment, et cetera. And I think that that's what Sam's betting on with Tools for Humanity, is that he is corporatizing that government infrastructure. Now, a company like the United States, for example, won't be facing that challenge. But if you look at countries where WorldCoin is having a big impact, it's countries like Portugal, Brazil, Argentina, right? Countries that are democratic in name, but yet don't have the fiscal ability to support themselves. And it's a low probability bet, but it's not zero, that those countries are going to need the support of, I'm calling it gas, right? Government as a service. And they're going to have to hire a company like Tools to come in and literally be that infrastructure to connect the elected direction of government with the actual services delivered to the people. And I think that's where we're going. AI is going to disrupt government. And so where will that revolution come? The revolution won't come with changing the elected head of government. The revolution will come with how those services are delivered to people. And I do think in places in the world, we will see that fulfilled by corporations. Absolutely.
And what's the business model of WorldCoin? I don't think it's going to be a free thing, right? Or maybe it's going to be innocently start like OpenAI, nonprofit. But in the end, they're just going to realize that capitalism is not there to move. What would be their business model here? They take a percentage.
They're going to be the world central bank. That's the answer. And okay. I'll be very brief in this, is that if you look at human motivations, one of the motivations is money. And Sam Altman chose OpenAI because it was the opportunity to make the most money, right? Y Combinator was his first bet. It gave him a lot of little bets. And then he understood that the future is going to be determined by inverting that and making a few really big bets. So he's bet on a longevity company, he's bet on a nuclear fission company, and he's betting on OpenAI as well as Tools. And again, in the short period of time we have, I won't get into those. But if you think of where is the greatest potential opportunity, it's not owning WorldCoin. It's WorldCoin as a tool to control monetary policy at a country or global level. That's my dystopian take. So I'll end with a hot take too. What's that?
Yeah, it's pretty creepy that that it's like control, right? They scan your orb, so that's like a requirement, and that could be abused. I mean, that's definitely not like the evil master plan of Sam Altman, right? But it's pretty preoccupying as well for libertarians. And if they go into these poorer countries, like most of these people don't even know what it means to
they have no idea what
be
it means.
Free. They don't know what it means to give out your data, your orbs, like, hey, free money. But everything comes at a cost, right? Eventually. Let me ask you that. Are you worried for your students with that AI revolution that's happening? And what kind of worries are you seeing into them? What kind of questions do they ask you when you're giving classes?
So first of all, it's shocking the number of students that blindly trust AI. I know that because when I if I give an assignment, I get 50 responses. And the number of responses that literally have the exact same structure. Every response is 4 sentences, and the sentences have the same words and different. It's like, think people. So that's my one argument for human in the loop. I find that, yes, the current job market is difficult. I get that. But I think between what we think are the expectations for students aged 22 to 25 needs to be completely revamped. The idea of, getting a good job at a good company at age 22 when you have no experience, that's over. Unless you're a genius, that's over. AI has taken those roles. It's taken the analyst roles. It's taken the sales development representative roles. It's taken the social media babysitter roles. That's all gone. So parents and students need to realize that ages 22 to 25 need to be completely rethought. There's never been a less risky time to spend those 3 years working at a startup, swinging for the fences, trying to hit a home run, so that at age 25, you are infinitely hireable across a variety of sectors. You're AI literate. You're not just AI literate, but you're augmented with AI. And this gets back to my original point of AI as a tool. So if you're 25, you've tried a company and you have AI in your tool belt, you will be infinitely employable. Exactly the opposite of what most 22-year-olds are today. That's the most important advice I can give.
Shouldn't they just go ahead and start a business
Yes,
instead? Isn't that like fully way more scalable than
there is.
being
It
employed?
has never been less risky to start a business than it is today.
Love
Because
that.
at
Let's end with
22,
that.
the opportunity cost was I'm giving up that entry level job at a good company where I can build a career. But we know that careers don't exist anymore. So who gives a crap what you do between 22 and 25? By the time you're 30 years old, you're never even going to put that work on your resume.
So
So
how are universities gonna survive that? Like, let's take an institution like Berkeley. Like,
sure,
is that model gonna scale?
here's it's going to bifurcate. And what does that mean? Let's just take our parents' generation, as people who are in their 60s now, they 50s, 60s, 70s, whatever. The dividing line in society used to be a college education. If you had a college education, you were a ticket to the upper middle class and above. And if you didn't have a college education, well, you were going to be a ditch digger. And what's come about is these profit maximizing corporations have used a generation of college graduates to actually concentrate wealth. So you have this group of people who went to college but don't have necessary skills to help them concentrate wealth, and they're screwed. They're literally screwed. That's just, if my friend Martine is my classmate, he said, the future, there's going to be 3 jobs. Either you fix animals, people are always going to have pets, so fix animals, fix people, there will always be a human-centered element to healthcare, or know how to fix robots. Those are the 3 jobs going forward. And so I would start a company today that solved one of those 3 ends. And if you fail, you have experience to work at another company achieving one of those 3 ends.
Yeah, way more bullish on fixing robots because we're gonna have more robots than human, in my opinion, a couple of
Absolutely.
decades from now. And also, the pet bots are gonna be more popular than an animal bot, sadly, because they will give you more affection. They will have all your selections, right? And I'm speaking this as I have 2 dogs, 2 real dogs, but right by my
I
feet
have
here.
2
But
real dogs as well. And yeah, the time it takes to train the dog to your habits, that's one. And then at the end of life, like, how do you let go of a dog? That's a whole nother issue as well. And so when that's replaced by whether it's a piece of hardware or a piece of software, I tell executives, and they look at me like I'm crazy, but I tell them, in your career, you will hire someone whose best friend is not human. And I totally believe that.
right. Thanks for the conversation today, Jeff. Where can people find out more about you?
Sure. Please visit my website, biginnovates.com, to learn about my strategy work. You can also follow me on LinkedIn, where I post quite frequently. And I have a podcast, the Big Strategy Podcast, where if you check out our YouTube channel, you'll see a recording of this video in the not too distant future. So, Charles, it's been totally awesome being with you. Thank you so much. What a great, exciting, and really deep and quick conversation. I hope it's what your audience is looking for.
Yeah, for sure. That was